It's that time again, folks. Time to make my Premier League predictions 1 month before the transfer window ends, just so I can milk all the views I can. So no reason to really have any other intro, let's just get right into the prediction, shall we? Sheffield United are back in the big time after finishing second in the championship to earn promotion. If you remember 2019-20, which didn't happen, Sheffield United finished 9th in the Premier League, but even at one point, they were 5th. Don't ask fans about the season after, which resulted in the sacking of Chris Wilder. Now, under new manager Paul Heckingbottom, Sheffield United played quick and direct in attack. They ranked 3rd in the championship for direct attacks last season. In defense, the team is lined up in a back 5 with an emphasis on pressing. The team won half of their duels last season and made more tackles than any other side. That all said, Heckingbottom will have to adapt to much stronger competition. Midfielder Sander Berge is the main creative cog within the midfield despite being deployed as a defensive midfielder. 6 goals and 5 assists. He had 3 progressive carries per 90, which puts him in the top 2% amongst midfielders in the next 8 competitions, and was also top 1% for carries into the penalty area. He was very reliable in defense too, top 1% for challenges lost per 90. Another player to look out for is center back Alnel Ahmedhodzic. This guy has potential to be an FPL star because he plays as a center back, but really he plays all over the pitch. As a right center back, Anel carries the ball often and makes more touches in the box per 90 than 96% of defenders in the next 8 competitions. However, Sheffield United saw one massive departure, and that was their top scorer from last season. Iliman Ndiaye scored 14 goals and assisted 11. With him now gone, the club brought in Benny Traore to replace him. The man from Swedish club Häcken scored 12 times last season. Another big signing was center back Austin Trusty from Arsenal. The defender impressed last year with Birmingham City. Outside of those two, however, there really hasn't been many significant signings for the club, which is mainly due to financial constraints. Oh, and look at the news. Sander Berge is actually on his way out to join Burnley. This club is f***ed. Hey guys, so due to time constraints, I won't be able to do one of those wacky FPL trailers that I usually do every year, but once again, I am opening my Fantasy Premier League to you guys, so if you want to join, there will be a code displayed right here, or you can join through the link in the description. If you're new to all of this is very important. You have to have your squad set up before you can join a league. So again, if you want to join my Fantasy League, there will be a link in the description, or you can join through the code displayed here. Winner of my league gets this mug. Luton Town were in the 5th division just a decade ago, but now they're in the big time, the Premier League. It's truly inspirational stuff. Even better is the fact that away fans will probably have to walk through someone's kitchen to get to their seats. While odds are against Luton, history is actually in favor of them. None of the last 4 teams to have made their Premier League debut went straight back down. Under manager Rob Edwards, Luton's attack is pretty much just Route 1 and inshallah. Carlton Morris was behind the majority of the club's goals, scoring 20 times. Keep in mind, this guy can practically score with every single part of his body. I don't think staying defense will say much about how they fared this season, but Luton did concede the 2nd fewest goals in the championship. Now, other players to look out for include Tom Lockyer, who actually collapsed during the playoff final, but luckily made a full recovery and had heart surgery recently. The defender averaged nearly 8 ball recoveries and 4.5 aerials won per 90, both in the top 3% amongst defenders in the next 8 competitions. You also have midfielder Jordan Clark, forward Elijah Adebayo, and defensive midfielder Peli Rodok Mpatsu. Adebayo last season scored 7 goals and assisted 3, while Peli has been a long-serving veteran of the club since 2013. Luton in the transfer window this summer has made some pretty decent additions to the squad. Left back Ryan Giles from Wolves had 11 assists for Middlesbrough last season, and he also averaged 10 crosses per 90, which was top 1% for fullbacks in the next 8 competitions. Midfielder Tahith Chong had 4 goals and 5 assists for Birmingham City last season, and though a small sample size, left back Issa Kabore averaged nearly 3 shot creating actions per 90. The Hatters seem to be building upon their core, trusting in their longtime veterans, but unfortunately I just don't think it'll be enough to survive this year. Wolves were actually bottom of the table going into the World Cup break. However, thanks to the heroics of Super Lopetegui, Wolves finished a respectable 13th. Going into this summer though, it ain't looking good. Wolves stretched their finances to the limit last season, and so this summer probably won't see that many significant additions, and it hasn't so far. The club also lost center back Nathan Collins and the heart of their team Ruben Neves. Not to mention the center back depth looks very weak. Besides Max Kilman, there's really no one else. And even worse, Their attack looks awful, and it's looked awful for the past 3 seasons. In fact, throughout the last 3 seasons, Wolves have averaged fewer than a goal per game. And last year in particular, despite finishing 13th, they had the worst attack in the league. It is said Pablo Sarabia is being moved up to become an attacking outlet for Wolves though, so if he discovers his past form, maybe Wolves can grasp onto something. Matheus Cunha is another player that could contribute to the Wolves attack, but he really hasn't shown anything so far. In terms of signings, they really haven't made many. They brought in young midfielder Boubacar Traore and fullback Matt Doherty. Doherty thrived during his first stint with Wolves, but I'm not really sure if he'll be the same player as before. To sum this up though, I think you can very much tell I just don't have any belief in this Wolves team. It's been fun, the Portuguese memes have been great. I mean, we also got their third shirt that looks very much just like Portugal's home shirts, but I think it's time to bid farewell.
So it has come to my attention that Julen Lopetegui has actually just parted ways with Wolves. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if they finished 19th now, but we're just going to keep them 18th for now because I'm too lazy to change this.
Bournemouth last year were favorites to go down, but defied all odds last year and finished 12th. They also have a new head coach coming in this summer, Andoni Iraola, a man who brought Rayo Vallecano to great heights throughout the last 3 years. Iraola's philosophy sees the team press a lot. Rayo Vallecano had the second highest challenge intensity in all of La Liga last season. Iraola also lives for the underdog mentality, which is a perfect fit for a team with Bournemouth's history. The Cherries lost fullback Jordan Zamora and also Jefferson Lerma, who provided goals and composure in the midfield. But they still have Philip Billing, who scored 7 goals, and also Dominic Solanke, who didn't look like a complete joke for once in the Premier League. Solanke scored 6 goals and assisted 7. We're starting to see him actually develop. Also, watch out for winger Dango Awatra. I believe he had 1 goal and 3 assists in a very limited amount of starts. Goalkeeper Neto will also be very crucial to Bournemouth's survival this season. According to post-shot XG, which measures how likely a keeper is to save a shot, minus goals allowed, Neto was the 9th best keeper in the Premier League. By the way, just in general, that stat is a lot more accurate than just save percentage. In my personal opinion, it's probably one of the best ways to measure how good a keeper truly is. In terms of transfers, Bournemouth has made some pretty good additions. Center midfielder Hamed Junior Traore averaged nearly 3 key passes per 90, top 4% amongst all midfielders in Europe. He averages a lot of tackles, but also his success rate in that is awful. But if he can get those numbers up, he can truly be something special for Bournemouth. The Cherries also acquired promising left-back Milos Kerkez and striker Justin Kluivert. If things go well for Iraola, I don't think success will come right off the bat. I think it'll be more so a slow learning experience. For that reason, I can only really see them just barely surviving. Speaking of survival, Everton have barely survived the last 2 seasons in the Premier League. They should have gone down last season, but thanks to Sean Dyche, they were safe. And this was despite the Toffees having the 2nd worst attack and no actual reliable finisher. Sean Dyche will need to produce even more black magic though, because the club's god-awful spending has finally come back to bite them. Like Sheffield United, the club is under very massive financial constraints this year. So really this summer you'll only see them acquire players for cheap or free transfers or even loans. But that's not the worst part, because Everton also faces a hearing over violations of profit and sustainability. And if found guilty, they could actually be deducted points. Goalkeeper Jordan Pickford had a crucial impact in Everton's survival. Pickford, statistically speaking, faced the most tough shots with 60 post-shot XG. In terms of post-shot XG minus goals allowed, he ranked 6th best. One of Dyche's minions, Dwight McNeil, had a pretty decent season and was Everton's top scorer with 7. And keep an eye on Amadou Onana as well. Last season, he showed glimpses of the potential he has. Amongst all midfielders in Europe, Onana was in the top percentiles for percent of dribblers tackled and challenges lost per 90. In terms of transfers, like I said before, nothing that special was going to come in, but we do have a new fullback in Ashley Young, who is now 38 years old, and Arnaut Danjuma. Danjuma was supposed to join Everton back in January, but then Spurs hijacked the deal, and as a result, the winger didn't play much for Spurs, 169 minutes to be exact. But with more minutes, maybe we'll see peak Villarreal Danjuma again. Now, if it wasn't for Sean Dyche, I would have easily said Everton were going down. I just wouldn't believe in this team if there was anyone else matching them. But this is kind of Sean Dyche's specialty. The less money spent, it's almost like the better he performs. For once, Fulham wasn't a yo-yo club, and that's all thanks to Alexander Mitrovic's 14 goals, which led them to a 10th place finish. However, it's been made public as of recent that the Serbian striker wants out. Fulham struggled anytime Mitrovic wasn't playing, so this isn't a good sign for the upcoming season. He hasn't left yet, but as I said before I even made a single prediction, the transfer window is still going on for the next 3 weeks. So really predicting Fulham's position in the league more so goes down to predicting Alexander Mitrovic's decision, which is f***ing stupid. But hey, views, right? Willian could also be out as well. He recently accepted an offer from a Saudi club 2 weeks after signing an extension. Marco Silva was also rumored to leave after he was offered a bag by a Saudi club. However, he's committed to the cause in West London. His playstyle sees Fulham play quite aggressive in attack, and one player that really truly fit into that aggressive culture was midfielder Joao Palhinha. The man was everywhere and an absolute nuisance to the opposition. Top 1% in tackles won per 90, tackles in the defensive third, midfield third, and attacking third per 90. Top 1% in all of the stats listed here. Tackles won per 90, tackles in the defensive third, midfield third, and attacking third per 90. Palhinha did get injured recently though, so he probably will miss the first few matches. Goalkeeper Bernd Leno made a transfer last year to Fulham, and it was fantastic for the club. Other players who should have good campaigns include Kenny Tete and Tim Ream. Keep an eye also on Jay Stansfield. The young player scored 9 times and assisted 7 in League One, so if he gets a chance to play for Fulham, watch out for him. In terms of transfers, there's mainly 2. Centre-back Calvin Bassey, and striker Raul Jimenez. Jimenez hasn't been the same since the head injury, but he should be able to provide a few goals. And Calvin Bassey is a pretty exciting signing, a solid defender with excellent ability on the ball. Again, because of Mitro, it's really hard to predict where Fulham will truly finish. So I'm just going to assume that within the next couple of weeks he leaves and Fulham struggle without him. But that being said, the club's main core should be able to keep them up. West Ham may have finished 14th and flirted with relegation throughout last season, but I don't think fans really cared that much because the club won its first European trophy in over 43 years. Yet again, this is why predictions get kinda tricky, because West Ham are in the Europa League now, and realistically speaking, they can really only focus on one competition. In this case, I would say they're focusing more on the Europa League because that's an easier avenue to the Champions League. Manager David Moyes has his team play very direct in attack while they tend to sit back and absorb pressure. But the effectiveness of that system could suffer now that Declan Rice has left. No one comes even close to the defensive qualities of the former West Ham midfielder. So as a result, his departure leaves a massive gaping hole that West Ham need to deal with. While that's left in question, fortunately, West Ham still have Lucas Paqueta. The attacking midfielder proved last year to be a great creative outlet with an even better defensive work rate. Jared Bowen saved most of his good form for the Conference League, so as a result, his league form kind of dipped. I don't think much is going to change there. I'm expecting the same. Centre-back Nayef Aguirre was pretty decent. I'm expecting him to improve from last year if he can stay healthy. And once again, this is why predicting before the transfer window ends is such a pain in the ass. Declan Rice was sold for over 110 million, and West Ham have done nothing so far in the transfer window. In fact, they're the only club in the Premier League this window that hasn't made a single signing. Either way though, I fully believe West Ham are probably going to put most of their eggs into the Europa League. And for that reason, I think they'll finish 14th again. Nottingham Forest purchased an ungodly number of players last season, but somehow made it work. After initially struggling, the team went on a memorable run and finished 16th to secure another season in the big time. Manager Steve Cooper has his team play football kind of like a snake. Wait patiently in defense and then snap an attack when the moment presents itself. Morgan Gibbs-White was easily the signing of the season for the club with his 5 goals and 8 assists. Striker Taiwo Awoniyi found great form during the last stretch of games after coming back from injury. 10 goals in less than 1,500 minutes is very impressive. One player I'm excited to see more of is striker Brennan Johnson. In his Premier League debut season, he scored 8 goals. Then there's center midfielder Danilo, who I fully expect to break out this year. The Brazilian joined in January and was influential to Forest's positive run. He can carry the ball with conviction and take on defenders with ease, which you can see in his 73% of successful take-ons per 90 last year, which puts him top 3% amongst midfielders in Europe. Now, unlike last window, Forest have calmed down with the signings. They acquired winger Anthony Elanga, striker Chris Wood, and fullback back Ola Aina. Ilanga showed promise through limited appearances at United, so we'll see what he can do with more minutes. Forest still need a keeper though, but they are linked with Dean Henderson and also Matt Turner now. Overall, I think Forest kind of played some 4D chess here. They went very high risk, high reward with their transfers, and it's paid off because now they have a very solid Premier League team for the future. So that being said, they should be able to finish lower mid-table. Crystal Palace had a decent start to last season, but then ran into a 13-game winless streak. Luckily though, 800-year-old Roy Hodgson came in to save the day and Palace finished 12th. The question is though, with the purple patch gone, can Roy Hodgson survive an entire season? I'll be honest, I don't think that's the case, but Palace still have a pretty strong enough team to finish 12th again. Like many Premier League teams, Vibes FC plays somewhat direct in attack, while off the ball they're pretty passive. The team lost their most valuable player in Wilfried Zaha, but with so many other technical specialists, it shouldn't really be that much of an issue. For example, Roy Hodgson got the best of Eberechi Esse last season, 10 goals and was in the top 1% for successful take-ons per 90. Winger Michael Olise, who looks like a family member died every time he scores, had 11 assists, and even the defenders, Joachim Andersen and Mark Gahey, produced a solid partnership in the back. Centre-back Chris Richards also impressed anytime he was actually healthy, while defensive midfielder Cheikh Doucouré should impress even more than last season. He made 1.8 interceptions per 90 and was within the top 15% of challenges lost. In the window so far, Palace has brought in Jefferson Lerma, who has the ability to score from the midfield, and 19-year-old Brazilian forward Mateus França, which just adds to the profile of potential ballers. Speaking of ballers, keep an eye on Jessurun Raksaki if he gets an opportunity. He scored 15 goals and 8 assists in League One. Just a year ago, whenever people thought of Burnley Football Club, they imagined Brexit football. Very tall players. But things have drastically changed in just a single year since Sean Dyche left. It's like Tila Tequila now. The team is entirely unrecognizable from what it used to look like. And that's due in part to manager Vincent Kompany's revolution of dynamic attacking football. Burnley ran away with the championship with both the best attack and defense in the league. While Burnley should have eased staying up considering how they play, Kompany will need to mix some pragmatism into his ideals. Midfielder Josh Brownhill did fantastic work in setting the tempo, and he also was involved in 15 goals. Centre-back Jordan Byers' loan has been turned into a permanent deal, and for good reason. The defender is brilliant on the ball and has excellent precision and range in his passing. Byer averaged 80 passes per 90 and averaged a completion of 91.4%. One player Burnley couldn't keep a hold of was their top scorer from last season, Nathan Tella. However, striker Zeki Amdouni was brought in to fill in the role of goalscorer. He bagged 12 goals last season for Basel. Burnley also decided to acquire a new goalkeeper in James Trafford. Trafford had a 78.8% save percentage from facing 160 shots on target. Other players Burnley brought in include centre-back Dara O'Shea and Nathan Redmond, just for some experience. Speaking of wingers, there's like 7 different options for Burnley this year. But anyways, this new age Burnley kind of gives me like a Man City Junior kind of vibe, especially since they actually have poached young players from Man City's academy. However, this team has a promising and progressive style. Most of the players are technical to a T and young. Burnley should easily stay up this season. Brentford impressed, finishing 9th last season, and hope to build upon that and challenge for Europe. However, with the suspension of striker Ivan Toney until January, those chances kind of get hurt. Because Toney contributed to 34% of Brentford's goals last year. But perhaps new signing Kevin Shade can step in. He was top 1% for Aerials 1 amongst wingers in Europe. Manager Thomas Frank has been setting up Brentford to press high and counter. No other team scored more goals from turnovers in the final third than the Bees. Brentford is also a very tall team. If you sent the players on a trip to Japan, they'd look like aliens to the rest of the public. And that height truly contributed to the attack because no other team besides Liverpool could even come close to Brentford's goals from set pieces. One loss that is more than likely happening though is the departure of goalkeeper David Raya. Raya was ranked 6th in the league for post-shot XG faced and 4th for post-shot XG minus goals allowed. Now the suspension of Ivan Toney is a massive gut punch, but there is still winger Brian Mbeumo. He scored 9 goals and assisted 8 last season. And also Johan Wissa is a good option off the bench. Meanwhile on the defensive end, Ben Mee has kind of become somewhat of a fan favorite for the Brentford faithful. He's a brave defender with great passing ability from the back. Now players I'm hoping to see more of include Mikael Damsgaard and Keane Potter-Lewis. Especially Damsgaard, because if you remember Euro 2020, I mean, that version of Damsgaard was just so fun to watch. Another one to watch is center back Kim Ji-soo. He was recently featured in the Under-20 World Cup team of the tournament. And when it comes to transfers, Brentford has made some pretty proactive moves. A new defender in Nathan Collins and keeper in Mark Flecken. Flecken was top 5% in post-shot XG minus goals allowed. Like I've said now 3 times, the suspension of Ivan Toney really hurts Brentford's chances of challenging for Europe, so I think they finish around upper half of the table. When Unai Emery arrived at Aston Villa in late October, he sent Aston Villa skyrocketing to 6th place. And at one point of the season, the Villains won 7 straight, a streak that hasn't been seen since 1993 for the club. And to cap off such a wonderful campaign, God Emperor Emery led his team to Conference League qualification. Aston Villa is above average when it comes to intensity and winning the ball, especially in the final third. Their attack, on the other hand, is relatively slow, but still very efficient. Ollie Watkins had his best scoring season with 15 goals. Attacking midfield Jacob Ramsey contributed to 13 goals in what was pretty much his breakout campaign. The 22-year-old also averaged nearly 3 touches in the box per 90, which was top 6% amongst attacking midfielders in Europe. Moving down to central midfield, Douglas Luiz has over the years become pivotal to Villa's success. While between the sticks, Emi Martinez was pretty solid last season. He ranked 7th for post-shot XG minus goals allowed. The only notable loss for Aston Villa this summer was 38-year-old Ashley Young, so, not too crazy. Talking about transfers though, Aston Villa have not been playing around. They got winger Moussa Diaby, a versatile baller. He scored 9 goals and assisted 8 last season for Leverkusen. Then there's center back Pau Torres, a defender Unai Emery is very familiar with. Torres is a solid defender with quite great vision. When he plays this season, I'm expecting him to kind of develop into a passing outlet for Aston Villa. And lastly, there's Youri Tielemans. If Emery can dig out the 2020 version of Tielemans, Aston Villa are thriving because they got themselves a bargain. But that's only if they can find that version. Now, I'm not entirely sure about Villa because, again, European football, and I'm not really sure what they're going to prioritize. But if I had to guess, probably the Conference League, because you have to remember, Unai Emery is the manager. That man is like a god when it comes to European football. Tottenham last year was severely underwhelming, and I couldn't have been more happy to be wrong about a prediction. After a disastrous spell consisting of 2 interim coaches and an Antonio Conte blow-up, Spurs finished 8th. Even worse, Spurs are far from contenders of any silverware with the squad they have, and Harry Kane is strongly linked with the move to Bayern. Now, Harry Kane scored 43% of Tottenham's goals last season, which really just goes to show how this club is if he leaves. There is still Son Heung-min and Dejan Kulusevski, but they'll have to improve upon last season because they just fell off a cliff. However, finally it seems like Spurs have learned from their mistakes and realized they aren't Chelsea. They have ditched away the idea of a short-term manager and have gone for a more long-term project in Anja Postecoglou. The Aussie managed Celtic and instilled a philosophy that sees domination of possession and a high emphasis on pressing. If Spurs can fully commit to this long-term project, they will see success. Just not this season. Because this season, it's more of a matter of who fits the system and who doesn't. Because let me tell you, if you look at the squad and the list of midfielders Spurs have, you'll have a headache. Speaking of midfield though, Spurs fans will definitely look forward to the return of Rodrigo Bentancur. Before his injury, he was top 5% in Europe for percent of dribblers tackled. Yves Bissouma will be hoping to have a far better campaign than last year. After being such a massive influence for Brighton, he was basically just a shell of that at Tottenham. Another player hoping to bounce back is centre back Christian Romero. The year he signed, he was like an annoying gnat you couldn't deal with. But last year, he was just trash. And nothing but. In terms of losses, I don't really think Spurs care that much. It's just Harry Winks and the Bolsonaro meat writer Lucas Moura. Players that have been added to the squad though include James Maddison. He scored 10 goals and 9 assists for Leicester last season. And he also averaged 5 shot creating actions per 90 and 2.5 key passes per 90. Manor Solomon was also acquired. For Fulham, he scored 4 times in 600 minutes, which isn't bad for a guy who started only 4 times. And finally, a new keeper in Guglielmo Vicario. Hugo Lloris has been declining faster than Tila Tequila, so this only made sense. Vicario, while unknown, was one of the best keepers in Serie A last season. He was top 3 in the league for post-shot XG minus goals allowed. Like I said, I think this is kind of the beginning of a new transition period for Spurs, and whether or not Harry Kane leaves or not, I think this will still be quite a struggle. So just like us a few years ago, I'm gonna say Spurs finish 8th again. Brighton had an incredible high-flying campaign, finishing 6th last season, earning themselves Europa League qualification in the process. A lot of that is thanks to Roberto De Zerbi, whose fusion of German pressing and Spanish passing has turned Brighton into one of the most entertaining teams in the league. The Seagulls scored 72 goals last season, only 3 teams bettered that. That guy Kaoru Mitoma played a big part in the season, contributing to 12 goals. The Japanese winger also averaged 3.3 carries into the penalty area per 90, top 1%, which just goes to show how dangerous this guy can be. Solly March played a part in scoring too, 7 goals and 7 assists. And watch out for striker Evan Ferguson, because a breakout season is almost inevitable for this guy. The same could be said about attacking midfielder Julio Enciso. Another player that had a breakout season was midfielder Moises Caicedo. He's an efficient passer of the ball and a great blanket over the defense. Moises Caicedo's situation is a little complicated though. I'm not sure if he's going to be playing for Brighton or Chelsea. Again, this just kind of goes back to predicting this before the window ends. But don't forget about the contributions from Brighton's defenders either. Fullback Pervisi Stupinan assisted 5 times last season, and Brighton's pride, centre back Lewis Dunk, is a brilliant outlet. However, with so many players blossoming, Brighton could not avoid the gluttony in the transfer window. Attacking midfielder Alexis McAllister scored 10 times but is now off to Liverpool, while goalkeeper Robert Sanchez makes a move to Chelsea. But with European football now, Brighton could be a lot more busy this window. Striker Joao Pedro signs for a club record deal. The 21-year-old scored 11 times and was in the top 1% for successful take-ons per 90. Then there's Bart Verbruggen from Anderlecht, who is an option for Brighton between the sticks. Players like center midfielder Mahmoud Daoud, center midfielder James Milner, and center back Igor provide some needed depth. But the biggest signing, it's not really confirmed yet, but there's a lot of strong links. Mohamed Kudus. And what a signing that would be. There could not be a better replacement for Alexis McAllister than the young Ghanaian. 11 goals for Ajax last season, top percentile for successful take-ons per 90 in the next 8 competitions, and not to mention the penalty box is like his second home. 6.2 touches per 90, that's in the top 4%. Even with European football, I still think Brighton should perform pretty well in the league. They've made the right signings and their depth is pretty decent, and with Brighton, you never know who else could break out for them. Chelsea was entertaining in the way that they were so bad despite spending over 600 million over 2 transfer windows. The team was the definition of inefficient. They could have the ball for as long as Father Time allowed and they'd still fail to find the back of the net. The Blues were shocking in attack as they finished with the 5th worst attack and placed 12th in the league. But now with the new manager in Maurizio Pochettino and no European football, Chelsea can fully focus on the league and developing their 15 trillion youngsters, which include the likes of January signings Nodi Madueke and Mikhailo Mudryk. The appointment of Poch sounds good. The only problem is, do Chelsea even really know the concept of a long-term project? Either way though, the Blues have done a complete overhaul of their squad. Young players like Mason Mount, Christian Pulisic, and Kai Havertz are out, and even experienced players like N'Golo Kante, Kalidou Koulibaly, and Cesar Azpilicueta have been sold as well. Replacing them are even more youngsters. Chelsea were in desperate need of a clinical goalscorer, and this is where Christopher Nkunku comes in. 16 goals last season, but unlike Havertz, he's not just a poacher. Nkunku is more so a creative hub. He averaged 4.2 shot creating actions per 90 and was top 6% for goal creating actions. Oh, but why don't you look at that? He's injured for the next few months. This now opens the opportunity for forward Nicholas Jackson from Villarreal. From the clips I've seen, the guy looks very promising. He scored 12 times in La Liga for Villarreal last season. Midfield was another area to improve, so the club brought in Leslie Ugochukwu. For Rennes, he showed a lot of promise as an anchor. Top 5% in challenges lost and top 3% in percent of dribblers tackled. The 19-year-old also has a great aerial presence. For Chelsea, it was kind of a task to figure out who to spotlight for this season, the current players at least. So that's why I put it last. Midfielder Enzo Fernandez is probably the main one to watch here. If you actually put yourself through the torture of a Chelsea match last season, you probably saw glimpses of what Enzo Fernandez is capable of. Enzo showed a lot of composure on the ball, and he has some incredible precision and range in his passing. Right back Reece James is also another player that we should probably spotlight because anytime he is healthy, he changes Chelsea completely. Chelsea's new fan favorite isn't just your typical fullback. He provides a good bit for Chelsea in defense, but even more up the pitch. And finally, watch out for centre back Levi Colwill, who had a fantastic loan spell with Brighton. Chelsea has a lot of work to do, but they are one step above Spurs. They removed their deadwood. Now it's just a matter of Pochettino finding out his best starting 11 and instilling his culture. Chelsea fans just hope that Pochettino isn't as shambolic as he was at PSG. Liverpool struggled a lot last season due to a mix of aging players and young inexperienced newcomers. They gave up the third most big chances in the league with 103, and they could only convert 37% of their own big chances. At their worst, the team was placed 10th, but did manage to rally back in the end. However, despite the comeback, the Reds could only secure Europa League football. A big downgrade, and signs that there needs to be an overhaul, especially in the midfield. The club did just that, letting go of Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Roberto Firmino, and James Milner, all who were once so important to Jurgen Klopp. And in comes a new wave of young midfielders, attacking midfielder Alexis McAllister and attacking midfielder Dominic Szoboszlai. McAllister, as we've mentioned before, scored 10 goals for Brighton last season, while Dominic Szoboszlai had 14 goal contributions for Leipzig. The 22-year-old attacking midfielder also averaged over 5 shot creating actions per 90, putting him in the top 9% of all attacking midfielders in the top 5 leagues. Just in general, Szoboszlai has great potential to be a brilliant creative hub for a high-flying Liverpool attack. He was top 5% in passes attempted, which he completed on average 80% of them, and he also averaged more than 5.4 progressive passes per 90. When it comes to attack, I fully expect Mo Salah to be as insane as he usually is. Even in a down season for Liverpool, he still scored 19 goals and assisted 12. And then there's the young guns of the attack. Cody Gakpo got transferred in January and has started out pretty well. 7 goals, and expect more creativity from him this season. Luis Diaz, anytime he's healthy, is a baller. If he can just have a consistent campaign without any injuries, he'll definitely break out this season. And finally, there's Darwin Núñez. He scored just 9 goals last season, but even worse, he underperformed his XG by 3. Núñez was always getting into the right positions, but it's just a matter of brushing up on his finishing. Now, one third we haven't talked about is the defense. There's a lot of worries behind it because you either have defenders that are just shells of their former selves, or Joe Gomez. If no improvements are made in this window, we could probably see peak Bundesliga football from Liverpool this season. All attack, absolutely no defense. All I'll say is someone pray for Alisson. Another worry, Liverpool's lack of spending leaves the club currently with just 22 players, 18 of which are outfield. The team still has European football, and one of the literal reasons behind their struggles last year, noted by multiple players, was fatigue. If it weren't for multiple dark horse clubs having European football and the other 2 top 6 clubs in rebuild mode, I would have probably had Liverpool in 7th. And honestly, I would not be shocked if that didn't happen. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that the attack produces more than the defense will concede. Newcastle is starting to blossom after their injection from the Saudi Public Investment Fund about 2 years ago. Last season, with the other Big 6 clubs worrying about Europe, the Magpies slid themselves into the last Champions League spot, finishing 4th. Eddie Howe has brought a new and improved version of his tactics to St. James Park, and it resulted in Newcastle having the joint best defense last season. Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, Sven Botman, and Kieran Trippier provided defensive stability that only Man City could better. Trippier in particular also helped immensely on the attacking end with 7 assists. Then there's goalkeeper Nick Pope between the sticks, a very good keeper. Midfield was another strong suit for the Magpies. Joe Linton has turned his entire career around, and that was simply because of one position change. The now midfielder brings composure to the Newcastle attack, averaging 3 touches in the box per 90, top 4%. Bruno Guimaraes is even more impressive, 4 goals and 5 assists, and averaged nearly 2 passes into the penalty area per 90. He was also brilliant in interrupting any opposition sequence. He averaged 1.5 tackles in the midfield third per 90, top 6%. Up front, it's even better for Newcastle because they're just spoiled for choice. Either you have Callum Wilson, who scored 18 goals, or Alexander Isak, who after returning from injury scored 10. There's also attacking midfielder Miggy Almiron, who scored 10 goals. There was one player of note who left this summer, and that was Alan Saint-Maximin. The baller had potential to be something special, but unfortunately injuries derailed his trajectory. Newcastle this summer have continued to make some really good high-profile signings. Tino Livramento provides some depth in defense, winger Harvey Barnes comes off a 13-goal season, and lastly there's defensive midfielder Sandro Tonali. He can dictate play with utmost composure, and he's got excellent vision. If Newcastle get the version of Tonali from 2 seasons ago, They're challenging for the title. While the season will be harder with Champions League football, Eddie Howe is already experienced with squad rotation. He used 30 players in all competitions last season. That being said, I think there's still a great lack of experience for European football, so I can only really say once again 4th place for Newcastle. Erik ten Hag in his first season made great strides in building a brand new team philosophy. He got the best out of players like Marcus Rashford, ended United's 6-year trophy drought, and led them to Champions League qualification. Ten Hag brought a style of play where his team press aggressively and play attack-minded, possession-orientated football that involves building from the back. He also saw the team increase in turnovers forced in the attacking third from 265 to 328. Midfield was the biggest improvement, a third that United have failed to find any balance in. But the combination of Christian Eriksen, Bruno Fernandes, and Casemiro did just that. They started together 25 times, and anytime they did start together, they won 76% of the time. While the manager did an exceptional job at implementing his tactics, there is still room for improvement. Within the top 6 last season, United scored the least amount of goals. Speaking of goal scoring, their top scorer of last season was Marcus Rashford, of course, with 17. And we're also finally starting to see flashes of Jadon Sancho's potential. During the later stretch of the season, Jadon Sancho picked up form and ended the season with 6 goals. Then there's 19-year-old Alejandro Garnacho, who had 5 goal contributions in under 600 minutes. I fully expect him this year to look even better. There's also winger Antony, who kind of disappointed considering how much he costed, but he has the work rate and the determination to be a good player. It's just a matter of just having better shots, because he just does not take good shots. In defense, United fans can be happy knowing they no longer have to even think of the prospect of Harry Maguire starting. Center back Lisandro Martinez looked really solid in the back last season. The Butcher was in the top percentiles for tackles won and percent of dribblers tackled per 90. Don't forget about Diogo Dalot, by the way. The fullback was absolutely flawless in the back. No one could get past this guy, as he averaged just 0.39 challenges lost per 90, top 5% in Europe. United made one notable sale, and that was David De Gea. At his peak, De Gea pissed me off. I don't know what it was, but every single time it was like Arsenal needed a point or something, De Gea was there just to ruin our days and make 16 saves in one game. Anyways though, De Gea's just not the same keeper as before, and United are moving past the need for him. Replacing him is Andre Onana, who could be an absolute game changer for this team. Unlike De Gea, Onana is extremely comfortable on the ball. Now other transfers include attacking midfielder Mason Mount. He's a great option considering Christian Eriksen just can't play as much as he used to, and if Ten Hag can get the best out of Mason Mount, then United have yet another great creative outlet. Lastly, the Red Devils bought themselves a new striker in Rasmus Højlund. Højlund isn't exactly anything special. He only scored 9 goals for Atalanta. He's very raw, but he fits just right into Ten Hag's system. Just give him some time. Manchester United and Ten Hag will be building upon the successes from last year. They have the squad capable of being competitive in multiple competitions, but I wouldn't really say they're up there with Man City and Arsenal just yet. Arsenal were so close to winning the Premier League last season, but things derailed real quick after 2 injuries to some defenders, fatigue, and inexperience. But Mikel Arteta and the Gunners seem to only just be getting started. I did a whole Arsenal preview, so if you want more of a detailed version of what I'm about to say here, it's up here. So because of that video, I'm not going to rewrite everything. This is going to be more of a shortened version of that preview. In defense, the club has more depth than I have ever seen before. There are 7 defenders capable of playing center back. And on top of this, we still have Alexander Zinchenko, who revolutionized the way we played from the back. Midfield we'll get back to in a second, for reasons you already probably know. But Jorginho, since joining in January, has been pretty solid for us. He was within the top 5% of all midfielders for medium-range passes completed, with 26 per 90. Up the pitch, you have some phenomenal creative options, one of which includes Arsenal's best player of the season last season, Martin Ødegaard, who scored 15 goals and assisted another 7. Ødegaard averaged 0.24 expected assists per 90, top 3%, 2.27 key passes per 90, top 4%, and nearly 5 shot creating actions per 90, top 1%. And of course, you have our main goal scorers, Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. Martinelli scored 15 and assisted 5, while our star boy himself scored 14 and assisted 11. There are still some questions about up front though. Gabriel Jesus can do everything except finish. He underperformed his XG by 3 goals last season. Meanwhile, Eddie Nketiah's finishing is probably even worse, but hopefully, just hopefully, it improves this season. But perhaps if goals go dry, we still have Leandro Trossard, who played pretty well as a false 9 when Gabriel Jesus was injured. In terms of losses, Granit Xhaka was the only big departure. He had his best season last season, scoring 7 goals and 7 assists after being played in an actual position he wants to play in. But now in his place comes Declan Rice. Rice is an elite ball winner. He only averaged 0.5 challenges lost per 90, putting him in the top 4% of all midfielders. The 24-year-old also averaged 9 ball recoveries per 90, placing him top 1%. He's also really good at knowing exactly when to step in and disrupt a dribble or pass. Interceptions are a strong suit for him as he averaged nearly 2 per 90, putting him in the top 5%. No offense to Granit Xhaka, great player, but Declan Rice is just 10 times the upgrade. We also acquired attacking midfielder Kai Havertz and center back Jurrien Timber, both very promising players in their own right. Arsenal really improved their depth this year. Again, should be a strong title contending season. But maybe it's just because I'm an Arsenal fan and all the history behind it. I feel like there's one team that just barely edges them out. And I think you know exactly who I'm talking about. Man City are coming off an incredible treble-winning season and now aim to make even more history by being the first team to win 4 consecutive Premier League titles. Since Pep Guardiola came in, City has won 5 out of the last 7 titles. The Spanish manager's philosophy has always worked on the base of patience and player rotations. But the thing that makes him stand out amongst all other managers is his masterful adjustments. And over €1 billion. However, this might be the first time in a while that the definite favorite isn't Manchester City. The Citizen squad lost 2 important players and they could see even more leave. The departures of both İlkay Gündoğan and Riyad Mahrez mean City lose a ton of experience. Both were also in the top 5% for most appearances in the squad. Riyad Mahrez, before the Haaland days, was a big part of City's scoring. While it felt like whenever the team hit a bit of a rut, İlkay Gündoğan would find a way to break through. Other players who could be moving out include Emerick Laporte, Joao Cancelo, and Kyle Walker, although it looks like Kyle Walker will more than likely stay. Another thing to keep in mind, the reason why City were so successful, were so dominant, and were able to win the treble, they didn't really have to deal with that many injuries. And we have no idea if that'll be the case this year. That all said, I still think City will win the league. Unfortunately. Erling Haaland had a record-breaking season with 36 goals in the league. People like to talk about how he struggled a decent bit from time to time, but the man still scored 36 goals in his debut season. Riyad Mahrez may have left, but there is still Jack Grealish. Assuming he doesn't have a hangover from all the metric loads of alcohol he's probably consumed this summer, the winger should perform really well. Last season, he had 12 goal contributions, and Grealish was also in the top 6% for goal-creating actions. Kevin De Bruyne, as expected, linked incredibly with Haaland and also assisted 16 times. He averaged a goal-creating action every 90 minutes, putting him top 1%. In midfield, you also have the likes of the attack-minded Bernardo Silva and the more defensive-minded Rodri and John Stones. Rodri easily had his best season of his entire career so far, and he also scored the winner in the Champions League final, so, you know, it's hard to beat that. The midfielder provides City an amazing outlet. You can rely on him basically 99.9% of the time. And yes, you heard correctly before, John Stones is a midfielder. As a defensive anchor, he was in the top 1% for challenges lost. Top 1% John Stones. In defense, you still have Ruben Dias and Nathan Ake. Much like his midfield friends, Ruben Dias just provides another excellent passing outlet. One criticism I do have about Man City that I've had for quite some time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, is goalkeeper Ederson. Ederson was actually below Hugo Lloris in post-shot XG minus goals allowed, and it's not like he's exactly facing the worst types of shots either. The main reason why I'm saying City will make history and win their 4th title is their transfers this summer. They haven't made many, but very effective ones. 2 Croatians arrive in Mateo Kovacic and Josko Gvardiol. Kovacic provides City another way of attacking with his almost 9 passes into the final third per 90. And Josko is one of the most promising defenders in the world. His profile more than perfectly fits Pep's style, and I mean, just look at those passing stats. Now, do I think City will run away with the title? No. But this is a squad fully capable of winning it again, just as long as no injury crisis happens. And so, those are my Premier League predictions. Here is the entire full showcase of those predictions. Please go ahead and pause, judge them, whatever. God knows how badly all of these will age, we'll just have to see. But what are your guys' predictions? Who's going to win the title? Who's going to qualify for the Champions League? Who's going to fall into the relegation zone? let me know. But of course, a massive shout out to all our patrons, including Janusz Balas, Stin, Miliway009, Adnasir Makalankom, Aldipu, Alex Rod, Araisan, Carlos Anaya, Daniel Ortiz, Francisco Hernandez, Joao Carvalho, Josh Budd, Marco Fujimoto, Miguel Munoz, Return Fire, Rory Burns, Slider Kid, Snifferx, Taco Okafan, Tomicus, Victor, Chris Damasceno, Chris Visconti, Q-Snatty Champs 2022, Dominic Griffin, Emmett Shea, Lewis, Joe Paricio, Lucian Von Croix, Michael Nista, Niche, Patrick Barley, Rowan Cookie, Sylvia Citrus, Subscribe Batende Tem, Unbroken Persona, and Valencia 14. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my TikTok, trying to get to 20,000 there, and of course you can follow my semi-active Twitch. But until then, I'll see you guys.